Salutations to all my gurus. I bow to the divinity in each one of you, and I thank Mr. God for this rare opportunity to speak about Dada Gavand. Param Pujya Dada Gavand was 85 when I first met him, and I have some very luminous and joyous memories associated with that visit. I had read some of his books when I went to meet him, and he gave us, me and my friend Gauri had gone to meet him, and he would rarely meet people. In fact, he would always say, I have said whatever I have to in my books, so he wouldn't encourage people to meet him. However, we were lucky and he gave us an appointment, and on that day, it was a Thursday, I remember that he gave us a fiery discourse, a passionate diatribe almost, where he asked us searching questions. He said, are you happy with your life? Are you okay with what is happening all around you? Don't you see it's a mess all around us? And what are you going to do about it? All you need is some time and talent, he said, in order to observe and also understand this mess which is within and without. And he spoke for a good 20 minutes in his fiery way, and I remember it was electrifying. His entire presence was very magnetic and uplifting. And one more thing I observed about him was his very intense, aloof, polyangular awareness. That is his phrase, polyangular awareness, which is what was very, very striking. And I remember there was tears streaming down my cheeks because he really had shaken us up. And then he said, I'm now leaving you alone. You just sit quietly for some time and I'll come back to you. And he went out of the room. And Gauri and I sat absolutely still, trying to process all that he had said in his very, very effective and intense manner. And then, after 15 minutes, he came back. And then he spoke in a very light, witty manner, as though nothing had happened, inquired after us, asked us who we were, what was our profession, etc. And when I told him that I was an English teacher, he invited me to come again on Sunday. Now that was wonderful news for me, because I had heard he doesn't see the same person again. So from that Sunday onwards, in fact, I was so blessed, so lucky that he invited me to his home almost every weekend thereafter. Every weekend, every vacation, because I was a teacher, I was lucky. For 10 long years this continued, and what he has given me can't be put into words, because it is invaluable, it is so precious to me. It is one of the best things that happened in my life. So let me tell you a few things that I feel are worth sharing, and may help some of you uh, in understanding what kind of teaching he advocated, and also um, how one could put that teaching into practice. He was a true master in that he was unpredictable, and all of us who worked around him or were associated with him always had to be alert. You couldn't come up with any kind of nonsense around him. That's not as if that doesn't mean that he was a regimented, military kind of a regimented person. He was actually very, very unique in that he integrated quite a few pairs of opposites. For example, he was detached and yet he was very compassionate. This I found out over a period of time. Then he was alert, but he was very relaxed. Initially, when we were alert around him, we were high strung, but later on, we also learned to relax, which is what happens automatically in the presence of such masters. Then he was serious, and yet he was very witty. He was disciplined. He had fixed timings for meals. He always ate a very healthy diet, and he would also be observant of what we were filling in our plates. He would even observe that that person should be eating a little more and the other person should not overeat, and so on and so forth. So we received even this kind of guidance at the level of the food or annamaya sheath, as it were. And also he was very flexible, as I said, though he had this discipline. Once in a while he would simply say, today no meals, let us order some ice cream, or let us prepare a chaat, a very very delicious chaat he would make. He was very good at cooking, and he was very resourceful as well. That's what I observed. And another feature about him is that he was extremely creative and artistic. He would read the newspaper very carefully every day. He would also listen to the news. And in the newspaper, he would tick some ads. For instance, once he asked me to go have a look at the utensils section in an exhibition, and he said to go buy a surgical steel vessel for him so that we could do some oil-free cooking. And when I actually visited the exhibition, I met the person who had come up with this bright idea, and he gave me some other kind of material to read, which I carried back to Dadaji, and he was very deeply touched by this man's creativity. He asked me to call him up, and he spoke to him and blessed him. And also, he would look at a lot of philanthropic work that was being publicized in the newspapers. He would ask us to contact a particular NGO, and very quietly he would send some donations. But when it came to us, seekers, he would always insist not to be in a hurry to do charity and to fritter away your energy outwards. That was what he always insisted on. He said, your first duty is towards yourself. And until that has been attended to, don't be in a hurry either to preach or to spread the knowledge that you have received, or teach others how to meditate, etc. He said, just don't be in a hurry. First consolidate through self-enquiry, first consolidate who you are and what all this is about. Then the action that will arise spontaneously will be the right action. Any action, speech, or thought that arises from the mind is not going to be the right thought, speech, or action, he said. He would say that what you need is intuitive intelligence, which is possible to activate. One can activate it only when one goes into silence in the no thought zone. So this is something very special. As an educationist, I understood a little bit of what he was saying and tried to apply it in my own teaching. And back home, back in college, in fact, I remember I had to display my department. As the head of the English department, I had to project a good picture of the department, and I put up a slide there showing that I had edited Dada's work. And it so happened that the Vice Chancellor, who had come as one of the committee members of NAC, just stopped the slide and said, who is this person? Let me have a look at the books. And when he saw the books, he got interested and he said, can I meet this person? So I said, I'll just find out and tell you the next day. And I persuaded Dadaji to meet him and allow him to visit him. And when we went there, he asked him, Dadaji asked him, so you've been a Vice Chancellor, what do you think is the role of a university? And the gentleman gave the usual answers, such as spread knowledge, ignite interest among students in reading and so on, and scholarship and research. And then he asked Dadaji, what would you say is the role of a university? And Dadaji gave a very pertinent reply. He said, according to me, the role of a university is to create a universal human being. So such were the answers that he would come up with. And of course, they were out of the box. They were always very creative. He always lived in close proximity with nature. He was always amidst nature, very close proximity to nature and to trees, mountains. He would live in Yeur Hills while he was in the Mumbai region, and therefore I was very lucky to be able to spend every weekend in this very picturesque setting. And he grew in his backyard a lot of fruits, such as his favorite guava and mulberries and also papayas. And whenever we gathered fruit for him, he would not cut the fruit readily. He would just hold the fruit in his hand out of tremendous gratitude, and he would also feel the fruit. And that itself was a kind of teaching. And then he had a photograph which he showed me of a basket, a fruit basket, and he had put it into one of his books, the book which is a photo book entitled Intuitive Intelligence, in which he says, nature gives us so much, but we greedy humans don't reciprocate. We give nothing in return. We keep grabbing all the time. So that was another teaching as I spent time with him amidst nature. I remember at one point it was the monsoon and it had rained a lot, and he called me out and he said, "Look at that." And there was a tree fully covered with glowworms. And he said, "Now be absolutely still and observe. You will see," he said, and I did see that for say about 20 seconds, only one part of the tree had the glow of the glowworms. Then after that, it would switch to another part of the tree. And he said, this is how life energy, the life force pulsates through the universe in spurts. And that is the micro moment he had in mind when he wrote about living in the now, living in the present moment is a micro moment, which actually is a moment of timelessness. If you can reach that kind of intense, attentive, inward stillness, which he demonstrated so very vividly through his own presence, because he was always ingathered, never scattered, never fragmented. That is one thing one felt in his presence. He also he also read palms, by the way, but he never told us about it. Later on, I found out that he was very good with astrology and palmistry. And one day, as I was serving his tea to him, he read my palm, and he said, "Look, Professor," he would always tease me as Professor. "Look, Professor, look at your strong analytical mind. That's the line for your head, it's your mind, that is the intellect that is indicated by that line." And my face fell, I said, "Oh, then as a seeker I have no chance, because as it is, professors tend to be very cerebral, and you are saying that my headline is so strong." So he comforted me, saying, no, don't look at it that way. It can be a blessing. It will keep you away from quacks in the meditative field. And also it will do a lot of good to you, because it will help you see how far thought can take you, the limits of thought, that it can take you this far and no further. And then you will willingly be quiet. Until you reach that point, you cannot be quiet. So then I felt a bit reassured. Also, he would sometimes play another kind of role. I remember once I went to him very agitated, say about 2 years into being with him, associated with him, and I said, "Dadaji, there is absolutely no progress in my meditation. I think I'm not reaching anywhere." And I looked rather despondent. So he reprimanded me at that point. He said, "Shall I tell you something? It is a feature of the mind to keep measuring. Measuring is a peculiarity of the mind. The mind can never know whether you are making progress or not. So don't you even think of counting and measuring how far you have proceeded. You leave that to me," he said, "and I'm telling you, you're on the right track." And then he put his hand on my head. That was what he would do. He would press it hard here. I didn't know what he was doing, but it felt good, and there was more clarity when he pressed this point on my head. Such are the memories that are coming alive even as I speak. I would say that his teaching was for me quite remarkable. I felt that the most important thing he gave me as a seeker was a certain degree of clarity about this structure called the mind. He said, please note that the mind is a very cunning and self-deceptive mechanism. And when you start on your spiritual journey, spiritual quest, it will do everything possible to derail your quest, because it abhors silence. It cannot sit still. And therefore, by hook or by crook, it will see to it that you don't proceed with your self-enquiry. His main method was that: intense, aloof watching or witnessing of whatever arises within. And so he said, watch out, it will try in a very clever way. It will make a backdoor entry and derail your attempt to go within. So I asked him, how will it do that? But exactly what are you implying? And he said, haven't you realized? First of all, it will make your whole sadhana mechanical. You will be, doing things as a habit formation, but you have to be very alert. You have to do it with total presence and total involvement. Whatever you are doing, even your waking hour meditation, apart from the sitting meditation, which is when you are quiet and inward, you have to be aware of how your mind is operating. Initially, perhaps you may not realize it, but once you look out for these things, you will be guided from within. That was one thing. The other thing he alerted me about was that it will keep you hyperactive, it will keep you busy, out and out. It will not allow you to go within and to sit quietly. Suddenly you'll remember, oh, I didn't do this, oh, that is left, and you will be tempted to break your sadhana and to attain to that. So watch out for that. And then he said, also, don't you go on romanticizing the whole thing. Don't praise the guru and go gaga over it, and don't keep singing the praises of a scripture also. He said that is another backdoor entry that the mind makes. It will keep you busy in this glorifying of the outer. That is an outer thing. You have to be able to go within, and then spontaneously, if praise arises, that is different. But here the mind is laying down a trap for you, and therefore he always said that your self-inquiry is a solo performance where the performer and the conductor are one, and no outer being can actually take you there. That doesn't mean you don't read scriptures or you don't visit gurus who can guide you. You can do all that. In fact, I remember once I asked him, shall I do the Art of Living course? And he said, by all means, do whatever you feel like doing. You can do your yoga, you can do your Sudarshan Kriya, you can do Kriya Yoga, you can do whatever you like. But remember that the last hump is always your own mind, which is the main hindrance. And in order to understand it, there is no other way but to be very quiet, still, and take an appointment with yourself, he would say, and sit still and process what is happening in the sense that you witness. And he used to um, illumine this whole business of witnessing with this metaphor of the siphon effect. He would say that when you start watching, it is always one part of the mind which is watching the rest of the mind. So you might think it's a deadlock situation. How do you get out of the minefield? But he said, as your watching intensifies, the energy that was going into thinking starts going back to the watcher or the watching. And as you do it more and more keenly, there is less energy for thought and more energy for watching, as in a siphon. So that was very vivid for me, and I actually experienced it as I started sitting for longer hours, witnessing my own thought process and my own feelings, because he would say feelings are nothing but refined thought. So he said it's the same thing in a different form. So thoughts, emotions, everything has to be witnessed without judging, of course, and without, try not to get involved with what you are watching. But very often you will get lost in a stream of thought. But the moment you remember, you bring yourself back and you watch. And all of you are already aware of this and have been witnessing for a long time, so I need not labor this point. But I did want to share with you the metaphor of the siphon. Then another thing I realized is he would say, do you know that even a circus tiger, a tiger in a circus, can be made to be quiet. He can be trained to be quiet, but that is not real quietude. You can similarly train yourself to be quiet for a while, but that does not mean that you got established in your inner quietude, as he was all the time. He was rooted in that quietude. So that stayed with me also, that metaphor of the tiger. And he said, deep down within, you are an ocean of tranquility, and the whole quest is to make contact with that deep layer within you. He basically would insist on the way of understanding rather than chanting or any of the other practices. He always maintained that these were very supportive, they were preparatory, but the last hump was always this mind which has to be understood until mind becomes spirit, he would say. Mind is falsehood, it dissolves and only spirit remains. And we are spirit, or each one of us anyway, always already are spirit, but there is a veil that covers it, and that veil, that barrier is your own mind, he would say. So I am eternally grateful to him for all this clarity that he brought in my quest, which hitherto was just a groping in the dark. And I remember I had read a lot of Aurobindo, a lot of Krishnamurti and his own work, and a wish arose, an aspiration that I should now meet a master in flesh and blood. And I'm very grateful to the Lord that this wish of mine was fulfilled so beautifully, in that I met Dadaji. That is already now 18 years since I met him. And around the year 2002 I met him. But time is of no consequence. I want to share another very interesting episode. Once a Swiss bus driver came to meet him, and he didn't even know English. But when he walked into the room and sat down, with his gestures and his broken English, he said that he felt a tremendous push which brought him here, and also in Dada's presence, he was feeling a great push to his own intense inwardness. That's the word he used. And after he left, I asked Dadaji, I said, Dadaji, why do I not feel this push? I am with you every weekend, but how is it that I don't feel whatever he is talking about? What is he talking about? And he answered me by saying, you know, the push is always present. But what can anyone do if the pull of attachment is so strong? So you observe the pull of attachment, and then you will automatically be pushed towards the divine. And he said, do you know that the life force, the cosmic life force, call it God or divinity, is eager to make its presence felt to you. You have to now take at least one step ahead, and that particular force will take 9 steps towards you. It is your birthright. Just be at it. But all you have to do is to be simple and humble, and also your thought movements have to come to a standstill, and then it will jump into you uninvited. Those are the kind of words he used, and he gave us a lot of hope when he said it in his unique, passionate way, and made us feel, yes, it's worth all the effort that we have been asked to put into the whole sadhana. One more thing I wanted to say is he never pushed us in the sense of forcing anyone. For instance, say about 5 years into meeting him, he said, I think, Professor, you should now take voluntary retirement. And I was taken aback because my service was not adequate enough to fetch me a pension yet. And so I said, Dadaji, I'll reflect on it and I'll tell you the next weekend. And the next weekend he asked me again, so have you made up your mind? And I said to him, Dadaji, I'm afraid I don't feel I'm ready for it yet. And then there is the matter of pension. My job is not yet going to fetch me a pension unless I put in these many years of service. He smiled at that and he said, my dear, in this kind of search, you don't have calculations, you don't make such computations. But he never forced me. He said, but look, it's all right. When you are ready, you will know from within. I wouldn't say leave your job if there is fear within you. And so he was very gentle. He never pushed. And I think my time had not come. So I don't think there is any point in wondering whether I did the wrong thing, etc. As it is, he would say, things happen just as they should, and all happens for good. So here I am sharing with you my journey so far. He would always say in his talks, what is the point in just continuing through time? That is what we are doing. We are not living. Living is something else. Living is very, very dynamic, very intelligent, very joyous, very spontaneous, and very meaningful. But most of us have some hidden agenda. We have this goal and that goal in mind, and we are always on the move and never contented and never really 100% present. He had very expressive hands, and he would say, can you be totally there, 100% there, with your energy ingathered? And I would say, but there is no energy left, Dadaji, with all the work that we have to put in. And he said, do you know that there is enough energy in every cell that can be activated? He would say, when you get angry, where does all that energy come from? Ponder over this. Tremendous energy shoots up when you are angry. So that is again the clever mind telling you it's difficult. Then I asked him one more difficulty. I asked him, but Dadaji, the speed of thought is so tremendous. I can't watch it. How can I watch it? The monkey mind doesn't let you watch the thought because it is always jumping around. So he gave me a very wonderful reply. He said, you know the speed of thought, but you have no idea about the speed of that life force. The source, you don't know the speed of that life force. That is in quantum terms. So when you go into pure awareness, as your watching intensified, as I said, he said, you were right. You are right. It is one part of the mind that watches the rest of it. But as you intensify your watching, unknowingly you step out of the mind field. And that's when you will taste the quality of that life force. And you will also experience the tremendous speed of that life force. So with his grace, I did have a kind of Satori experience in his lifetime, which I will share with you in a few minutes. But before that, I thought I would share with you his metaphor of the anti-gravitational force. He would say, we live a life of action and reaction and fritter away our energy in all directions. And that is not the way to transcend. He said, have you observed an aircraft? It gathers speed first and then it takes off. Likewise, if you see a rocket, say a space rocket, it has to break the gravitational energy field, that the pull of gravity, in order to break free and ascend. And that's exactly what happens in our inner space. He said, we have to generate a counter force to be able to transcend thought, transcend time, and taste this dimension of timelessness. And so maybe I should end with that particular experience which he gave me. Of course, the response to that experience also is worth noting. In the last year of his lifetime, it was the month of May, my vacation time, and he asked me to simply not look at his editing work now. He said, "You've done all the editing, don't look at my books," he said. "Now you just sit quietly. My attendant will provide meals, whatever you need. All you can do is go for long walks in the evening and morning, but the remaining time I suggest that you sit down and watch." And that's exactly what I did. And on day one, I sat down very enthusiastically and started watching. And my experience was that all kinds of thoughts began to come up. And they were weird thoughts, thoughts going back to childhood, thoughts which were not really linked with my day-to-day living. And later on, day two, the thoughts simply multiplied and things were getting out of hand. And I thought I would go insane watching those thoughts. And I again started getting frustrated. But then I stay put, because he had said the mind will try to derail your attempt to watch your thoughts and witness. So later on, say on day 3, I persisted, and I reached a point where it was almost a breaking point. But just then, the attendant, Mr. Yadav, approached me and said, "Madam, it's your time for nimbu pani, your lime juice." And I said, "Today we won't go for the lime juice, okay? Thank you very much. It's 3 o'clock, so we won't go for the lime juice." And then I went back to my watching. I was beginning to feel very, very dismayed and frustrated by then, and also a little scared that I was going out of my mind. But something kept me going, and again I sat down, closed my eyes, and started watching. And again there was a lot of seething, boiling cauldron kind of thing happening, and a lot of thoughts began to emerge, and they were just getting unbearable. I thought they would never end. But then something magical happened. The noise was getting unbearable. The speed was getting at me, it was getting to be too much. And then suddenly, absolutely out of the blue, suddenly things stopped. Everything stopped for me. And there was a certain stillness, which was certainly an other dimensional stillness. And it sort of was so heavenly, so peaceful, so joyous. And I don't know how much time had elapsed. After a while, the first thought came, and that was a remembrance of Dadaji's words. He had said, "When it happens, you will know it without any iota of doubt. You will not doubt it. You will know it has come, and there will be absolutely no doubt." And that was my first thought. This is it. I didn't even say this must be it. This is it. and it lasted a little longer and then started receding, receding, receding until it sort of disappeared, that state. And then my mind kicked in. My mind had already kicked in when it said, this is it. And but now the regular mind kicked in, and I thought, oh, it happened. It is there. It's not some mumbo jumbo. That dimension exists, and that it is very peaceful, and it is very, very blissful as well. And then I opened my eyes and looked at my watch, and I thought it must have been maximum 10 minutes. But when I looked at the watch, it was past 4. And it suddenly struck me that a whole hour had passed without my realizing it. I thought that must be timelessness. And I was very elated. And I rushed to Dadaji. Dadaji was not well in those days. In the last few months, he passed away in January. And so he was always lying down, and I went to him and I said, Dadaji, something happened. Can I tell you what happened? He said, I know what happened. Don't tell me about it. And he just faced the wall and went to sleep. Or he actually must have been play acting, but he did not want to talk to me. And I suddenly understood something. I thought he was trying to tell me, now don't romanticize this experience. He had always said, don't attach importance to experiences. All experiences belong to the mind field. So I realized that, and he later on said to me that it is good I went through this experience and to now build upon it. That is the piece of advice he gave me later on. But at that particular moment, he didn't want me to get attached to this experience. And in fact, I avoid sharing it unless it is a forum like this, where there are fellow seekers who might benefit from this experience. So I continue with my effort, my modest effort to go within and understand all the layers and layers of experiences and desires and attachments and fears and guilt that are stored within. And I hope that in fact, I don't hope that I'm sure in fact that I will be able to keep my promise to myself and to Dadaji that I will never, never give up this quest, come what may. And I seek all your best wishes and also Dadaji's blessings as I end this happy narrative. Thank you very much.